Hello, welcome to Jenkins Documentation Office Hours. Today is October 16th, and around the table there is myself, Kevin Martins, Bruno Verachton, and Meg McRoberts. Mark may or may not join. We just had an LTS release yesterday, so he may be doing the What's New stream right now, but if he joins, we'll welcome him with open arms as always. Agenda today, it's a little less than the last couple weeks, but we'll just go through it now. So we have the latest blog post from Jan Faracek about revamped tests UI. We'll touch base on Java 25 documentation, Jenkins elections, Hacktoberfest 2025 and its progress. We'll check in quickly on Google Summer of Code if there's anything to note there. If Birji doesn't join up, I don't know if we'll have any status updates in that sense. Chris isn't here to talk about the Chinese documentation site, neither is Mark, so we might just remove that one for today. Good first issues on Jenkins.io, LTS and weekly releases, and recent work done for Jenkins.io documentation. Any other topics, any other things we want to make sure is on the agenda today? Cool. Alrighty then. So first things first, so we have the revamped test UI and Jenkins blog that Jan wrote. And so this is about the JUnit plugin being revamped fully. And so it's got a completely updated UI. It's more matching to the rest of Jenkins, which is nice. And then Jan wrote about the new UI, the changes made within the UI. So things like more clarity and better definition of things like test names, stack traces, and interface scaling, which is really nice so that it can be a little bit more flexible on different size screens. So that's fantastic to see. And as always, thanks to Jan for the blog post, for the work in the UI, and for everyone else, their work in the UI as well. The Java 25 documentation, so I don't know that there's been any real movement on this, only because I don't know that we have Java 25 support within Jenkins at this point in time. I think we're still working on that at this point in time.
Yeah, I think Adrian has a draft PR or even a PR up for review regarding JDK 25 in Jenkins core, and as far as I know, it's building. So it should be good, but it's not merged yet. So we are not yet officially supporting Java 25. But that will come. And as for the plugins now, I have a process that tracks the adoption of JDK 25. And if I'm not mistaken, there may be 75 plugins to this day building already with JDK 20.
Cool. Yeah, that lines up with what we had last time about the plugin list and building and stuff.
Yeah. Mark and I still doing some experiments regarding building the top 250 plugins with JDK 25, but that doesn't mean they build in their repo. They build on our machines or whatever. The 75 I was talking about it, that plugins maintainers deciding to migrate or at least to add the JDK 25 compilation in their Jenkins file. So that's something else. I don't know if I made myself clear.
Separate. Cool. Yeah. So you're saying there were in addition to the other ones, there's 75 plugin maintainers that did this independently on their own.
Yeah, the 150 successful, depends. Some of them are already using JDK 25 on their own, so that's normal that they are compiling. And some of them is just us, Mark and I, trying to modify their Jenkins file in order to build that and see where this goes. Or no, we're even not changing Jenkins file because we are building locally. We're just changing the POM parent and try to compile and see where this goes. So two different things.
Okay, cool. Thank you for the clarification on that, Bruno. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next up's the Jenkins elections. So again, just a reminder, nomination period is closed, but voter registration is currently open. Alex Earl wrote up a nice blog post at the beginning of the election season to kind of explain the process. There is elections committee group that you can reach out with questions, and there's a voter group. You can see here the election voter 2025 group. This is going to be found on community.jenkins.io up here at the top. And so this is where you would go to join the voter registration group. Most of us have already joined. You can see here the list is growing quite nicely, which is fantastic. That's a lot of folks. That's awesome. Um, so yeah, 57 members. That's sweet. And then if you have not joined already, there is a join button that shows up right here, and you just click that, you join, you're good. Uh, the key thing here is that if you had not contributed prior to September 1st, you wouldn't technically be eligible to participate. However, if you've participated and you contributed to Jenkins in any way, shape, or form over the last year prior to that, you're eligible to vote. And so the registration period goes until the end of this month, October 31st. And then at the beginning of November, that's when voting will actually start and open. So that'll be open the whole month of November. And then results will be announced sometime early December, usually around the second or third, maybe, close to that, depending on how long it takes to just count everything and get in touch with folks. Um, but yeah, if you have not already registered an account on community.jenkins.io, please do so as soon as possible. Make sure you join the election voter group, and then that way, once November starts, you'll be eligible to vote. And then, as a small reminder on that too, there's 2 governance board positions, and all officer positions are up for election. Um, so we have got multiple nominees for a handful of them. I don't know the logistics of everything, but I know there are some positions that will have a legitimate election this year. The last few years, we've had kind of just one person nominated for the role. So it'll be nice to have a little bit more of a conversation and a discussion this year with the candidates. Next up's Hacktoberfest 2025. So Chris Stern wrote a nice announcement blog, and this was published at the end of September. Hacktoberfest is in full swing. We're halfway through October, so things are going well. From what I could see as far as documentation goes, there were a couple different pull requests submitted by Sardak for a couple of mobile responsiveness PRs. So there is some work coming in. I'm sure there's other work elsewhere, maybe on plugins or Jenkins core. Core not so much, but plugins and stuff definitely. So there is some work being done. Hacktoberfest is always a nice opportunity for people to get started with contributing to open source projects. So more to come on that. We'll see some more work done over the next couple of weeks, and maybe a couple more merge pull requests. Bruno, do you have any insight or anything that you
Like unfortunately not, because we don't have any numbers, in fact. So we don't know what's going on. I've seen a few PRs here and there on some of our repos, notably the plugin modernizer one. But no, we don't have the numbers. And frankly, as we have a reduced bandwidth, we haven't been able to invest as much as we wanted to do a few months ago for Oktoberfest. So we got what we got.
Fair
Sorry.
enough. Yeah, no need to apologize. But yeah, no, I mean, that makes sense. It's good to know. Definitely a little bit of reduction in bandwidth for the entire community, and the organizers that would normally be taking care of these sort of things. So it does happen, but we are still getting some participation, which is like the main thing there. So yeah, cool. All right. Thanks, Bruno. Google Summer Code. So again, 3 projects have completed, 2 were granted extensions. One of the projects is the retooling of Jenkins.io and the version documentation site. We checked in with Birji last session, and he indicated that he had about 15% work left, but then had to replace his computer. Now that he's gotten that all squared away, he said there was about 7% left, but still needed to do some work for the homepage and search. So more to come on that. Some other UI fixes that need to be done, but I'm sure Birji will be continuing to work on that as things move forward. I know for a fact that there have been some pull requests and some additional work being done by him on the repo that is created for this project. So more work's being done. That's good to know, and we'll have more news as that comes along. For the good first issues on Jenkins.io, yeah, I have not been able to generate that summary, so gonna just remove that part. But we have had a few good first issues created in the last couple months. Thanks to Meg for going through and finding some good first issues to create and suggest. And folks are working on it. There are some newer ones, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, I mean, August 21st was like the last created one. We haven't had any in a few weeks, but again, the team is dealing with reduced bandwidth to a large extent, so it's a lot tougher to generate some of those things. So that's okay. More to come on that. Hopefully, we can find some more, but if not, there are always things that you can find that you feel like you can improve upon. By all means, create the issue, do the work. Can make that contribution happen. If you know what it will take, make it happen. The next up, we have the LTS and week releases. So we had just yesterday, we had a new baseline release of LTS 2.528.1. So we have the changelog and upgrade guide ready to go for that. That's been merged and available. Nice little sun, good reporting here. We got no major issues thus far. And the upgrade guide does indicate all the updates coming there, specifically the container images moving from Bookworm to Trixie, which is really fantastic. That's a lot of performance support and new platform support for stuff like Risk 5.
Yeah.
I knew you'd be excited about that one, Bruno.
Yeah, of course. I was waiting for that.
And then there were some issues with the Jenkins core release yesterday when it was being performed. Thanks to the work of Mark, Tim, Jacome, Hervé, who was the release lead, and others, they were able to figure out what was going on and get everything squared away so that the release was finally published and everything came out successfully. We've since closed that milestone for the Jenkins LTS release. And we've already started the discussion about Jenkins 528.2. So that's currently scheduled for November 12th. And Chris Stearns signed up to be a release lead on that one. So that's exciting. So Chris has been release lead many times before. So they know what they're doing. And yeah, can count on Chris to do a lot of that. Plus the 0.2, 0.3 releases are a little less eventful usually. Asterisk there. But yeah, so hopefully that goes smoothly and we'll see that in about a month. And then we've also had 2.531 and 2.532 released in the last couple of weeks. The weekly change logs are again available where they normally are, and have all the changes and additions and bug fixes that might be included. And then finally here, so we've got a couple of things. It's been a little bit slower lately, but still wanted to call out the work that's being done. So thanks to Zbinek for updating the tip icon color. The tip icon color was a little less adaptive to different theming. So he was able to go in and fix that up and remove any obsolete code that wasn't necessary. Big thanks to Sadak for making the iframes responsive. So this is making sure that the mobile view can scale and respond accordingly as intended, instead of being a little stuck in not unusable, but an ill-fitting size and scale. And again, Sadark has also submitted a just separate pull request about doing the same for embedded videos so that they scaled more appropriately with smaller screens, which is really great. Still have to do some review on that one. But that is another good little help, and it's another Hacktoberfest contribution. So cool, great news on both those fronts. And then Hervé went and updated the source code hosting list for easier searching and viewing. And so what that means is, I'll just go to the PR. There's a page in the developer publishing documentation that allows you to see the maintainers in the repository access for different users. And so you can look here, see who's in charge of different things, see whether they're a maintainer or an admin. For instance, you can see here Mark is an acceptance test harness admin, whereas Damien is a maintainer. So neat little things like that. But yeah, Hervé went in and updated this, so it's a lot nicer, a lot more user-friendly in terms of searching and operating it, which is really nice. And then I didn't put it up here because it hadn't been merged yet, but Bruno's also worked on updating the Jenkins tutorials to move from GitLab to GitHub code spaces. And so,
sorry to interrupt, not GitLab, Gitpod, but of course it it starts with the same syllable, so that's okay.
I missed the second half of that one, but yeah. Okay, so Gitpod to GitHub code spaces. GitHub code spaces is their newer version of how to work in cloud and environment.
Yeah.
But thanks to Bruno, he's updated the tutorials to go towards that and instruct users to go towards the GitHub code spaces if they can't work locally. So
yeah, thanks for taking time to review that, Kevin. And the rationale behind that is that Gitpod, as we knew it, has sunset in October. So if you have an account, or if you don't have an account with Gitpod, you have now to use your credit card for something that used to be free. That's why we had to cancel everything or propose an alternative. And GitHub Code Spaces is 360 hours per month compared to the 50 we had with Gitpod. But it's not as smooth an experience as it was with Gitpod, but it's still working nonetheless, and it's still free for the time being. So we're good if you ever have not such a great network or an aging computer, or just you're not allowed to install Docker on your machine, then you can have everything within your browser window. You have working VM somewhere in the cloud. You have Docker, you have Docker Compose. And of course, thanks to that, you now have Jenkins running within the browser. Not really within the browser, in a VM that you can see through the browser. But nonetheless, it's amazing. If you're somewhere in the world where, some things are limited, you can still start with Jenkins easily and for free. So thank you, GitHub, for this feature.
thanks for the insights on that one, Bruno, and explanation. Yeah, I mean, I can speak from experience. My computer that I have right now is not particularly recent or up to par with what kind of power and everything that's needed. So having an alternative option, even if it's not the best thing I could be doing, it's better than what I have available to me. And so that's the important thing with that. Is that it gives people the ability and the opportunity to work on those sort of things, get up and running in Jenkins in a way that they don't have to, uh, you know, be going so far beyond their means to do so. So that's great. Thank you very much for that.
Welcome. Thank you again.
And so that's the end of the agenda that I had planned. Bruno or Meg, do you have anything that you want to talk about or discuss or throw on there before we wrap up for the day?
Nothing from me.
Nothing from me either.
Okay. So then we'll wrap this up here. I'll get Mark out of here since he didn't come today, and that's okay. Not mad. And so we'll wrap up. I'll cut the recording. That'll be posted and available on community in just 24 to 48 hours. And until next time, take care, stay safe. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out on Gitter or submit a PR if you see anything you want to update.
Thank you, good.
Sorry.
So much.
Hi.
Bye-bye.